Zork 2, The Wizard of Frobozz, The Next Step Downward to Danger. Part 1, The Wizard and the Demon. The door closes inexorably behind her. The barrow opens into a narrow tunnel, glowing faintly at the far end. On the ground is a familiar sword with strange markings and a brass lamp. But I thought, she gets both. They sure look the same. She walks towards the glow. The tunnel opens to a wide cavern dimly illuminated with phosphorescent mosses clinging to a high ceiling. A deep ravine winds through it, a small stream at the bottom. The walls of the ravine are steep and crumbly, and a small footbridge with rope railing crosses to the other side. A rectangle floats above the bridge. She steps onto it to get a better look. The bridge is sturdy but crude, the stream trickling in the darkness below. The sign is some kind of salutation, congratulation, and advertisement? While she's trying to figure out what it means, a strange little man suddenly appears on the opposite side. He wears a long cloak with a long pointed hat, with astrological signs. He has a long, stringy, unkempt beard. The wizard withdraws his wand and waves it in her direction. It begins to glow faintly. Before she can do anything, the wizard, in a deep and resonant voice, speaks the word, "Fall!" He cackles gleefully before disappearing. In a sudden, mad rush, the lamp and sword fall from her hands as she tips over the rope, plunging down, the wind whipping her braids about her head. She hears herself scream. Her last thought before the bottom was, "Will it hurt?" She wakes in a strange, red crystalline sphere filled with mist. She's dizzy and her head hurts. There is a sign on the wall too blurry to read. The mist becomes blue in one direction. She stands with difficulty and walks toward it. This is a blue crystalline sphere, mist everywhere. Beyond the sphere, there's a dreary room with large table and door. The mist becomes white in the direction she's walking. Her head is clearing. She steps into a crystalline sphere, looking out into a blurry world with a strange shadow moving overhead. There are thick white clouds around her, with the mist becoming black further on. I guess I'm already dead. What's there to lose? She steps into the darkness. She follows a corridor filled with dark mist into a black-walled spherical room. As she enters, a huge face materializes out of the shadows. "What brings you here to trouble my imprisonment? Surely you don't wish to join me?" "Quiero encontrar mi amiga." The face twists into a hideous grin. "She's welcome here as well. Despite my present limitations, I could show you both a good time." "Qué?" "Never mind. I have more pressing needs. You may be of some use to me in gaining my freedom from this place." The face suddenly turns pathetically sad. "I didn't choose this." "Neither did I." A black pentagram obscured by the mist appears. A sign? "I was tricked! This traps me! I must remit payment for my freedom like a common slave! I am no slave!" He's nearly hysterical. A moment passes. "Return to your quest. Mayhap you will repay this favor in kind some day." The face vanishes and the mist begins to swirl. When it clears, she is returned to the world, standing on the path leading to the footbridge, the lamp and sword in the middle. Who or what was that? What happened? Without hesitating, she quickly steps out onto the bridge, picks up the sword and lamp, and leaps to the other side. Part 2, The Riddle Room. The path leads into the middle of a great cavern, colorful walls carved out of stone. Stalactites and stalagmites of many sizes are everywhere. The room glows dim from phosphorescent mosses with weird shadows. A narrow path winds among the stalagmites. She follows the path. It leads to a shallow ford. On the other side is a dark tunnel that appears to have been enlarged and smoothed. She steps over the ford and enters the tunnel. She hurries, sensing a lurky, hungry presence. The tunnel leads into a garden. Hedges hide the cavern walls. If you don't look up, the illusion is of a cloudy day. The light appears to come from an unusually large growth of the glowing mosses. A carefully manicured path leads through the garden. In the center of a bed of roses is a small structure painted white. It appears to be a gazebo. She walks towards it. This is a gazebo in the midst of a formal garden. It is cool and restful here. A tea table adorns the center of the gazebo. On the table is a matchbook, china teapot, placemat, newspaper, and a letter opener. Awa. She takes the teapot, then retraces her steps to the shallow ford. She stoops to drink, then fills the teapot. In the tunnel, she turns on the lamp to get a better view. The walls are rocky and it's filled with dust and debris. One way leads to the garden and another, wider one, goes somewhere else. She takes that one. It opens up near a stream at the bottom of a deep ravine. Ahead is a tunnel with a faint whirring sound in that direction. To her left is an archway choked with vegetation. What's that noise? She walks through the tunnel into a large circular room with a high ceiling lost in the gloom. There are 8 identical passages leaving the room. There is a loud whirring sound coming from all around. It's disorienting. She takes one of the passages randomly. This is a room which is bare on all sides. On one end is a great door made of stone. Above the door is written the words, in Spanish and English. Clearly, whoever devised this world was very forward-thinking. No man shall enter without solving this riddle. What is tall as a house, round as a cup, but all the king's horses can't draw it up? Did they not think a woman would know the answer? Bozo! She cries. There is a deafening clap of thunder and the door swings open. She laughs and steps through the door. Part 3 of Magic and Tears. The doorway leads to a broom closet. There's a pearl necklace here with many large pearls. Another treasure hunt? She takes the necklace, then continues. She steps into a damp, circular room, the walls made of brick and mortar. The roof of the room is not visible, but etchings mark a sign on the wall. There is a large wooden bucket here. The etchings appear as random letters. It's some kind of well, that's for certain. How would a well work? When there was water in the bucket? She steps into the bucket, then pours some water from the teapot on the floor of the bucket, making a puddle. To her satisfaction and surprise, the bucket rises and comes to a stop. Un pozo con gozo! There are etchings on the side of the well.
Huh?
Across a cracked floor is a doorway leading into darkness. She gets out of the bucket and walks towards it. This is a small square room with a large oblong table in the center, apparently set for afternoon tea. It is clear from the objects on the table that the users were indeed mad. In one corner of the room is a small hole, no more than a hand's breadth high, the doorway in which she entered, and another passage. Sitting on the table are 4 cakes, each with lettering in different color icing. The cake with green icing reads, Comeme, but the writing on the others is too small to read. Her stomach rumbles. She takes all the cakes and eats the green one. It's delicious. Suddenly, the room appears very large, although everything she's carrying remains normal-sized. She stands in an enormous room, in the center of which are 4 posts, delineating a rectangular area, above which appears to rest a large wooden roof. In fact, all objects in this room appear abnormally large, although everything she's carrying remains normal-sized. There is a passageway nearby. She walks through the passageway. This is a large room, one half of which is depressed. There is a leak in the ceiling through which salty water drips, turning the depression into a kind of pool of tears. The tears I can't cry for fear I won't stop. The only exit is the one she entered. A stoppered flask with a skull and crossbones marking is here. The flask is filled with some clear liquid. Something lies at the bottom of the pool. She takes the flask and uses it as a magnifying lens to read the letters on the cakes. The red cake reads evaporar, the orange explotar, and the blue cake expandir. She drops the orange cake, then throws the red cake into the pool. In a flash, the pool evaporates, revealing a slightly damp but still valuable package of rare candies. She takes and examines them. Insects trapped in hard candy? What? She puts them in her pack and walks back to the post room, then eats the blue cake. It's even better than the green one. The room around her seems to shrink. She now stands before the large table again. Part 4. The Robot. She walks through the other passage and enters a low room with reflective walls. There is a robot and a green piece of paper here. She takes the paper, reads it. Oh, that's how this thing works? He might come in handy. She tells the robot where to go. Suddenly, the wizard reappears. Before she can do anything, he points his wand at her and in a deep, resonant voice says, "Fat!" Cackles gleefully, then disappears. Suddenly, her clothes feel too tight. She sees her reflection on the wall, turns away. Who are you looking at? A regrettably familiar voice speaks in her head. Her own. You're letting yourself go. Have you no self-respect? She feels compelled to reply. She hates herself for what she says next. I know. I need to get in shape. I shouldn't have eaten those cakes. She's feeling more depressed by the minute. Why do you wear pants even in the summer? Try a skirt for once, like Juliana. Too familiar. The mention of her cousin's name snaps her out of it. Oh, Juliana. The spells warp and weft unwind. I'm not Juliana and I'll never be, but I love her just the same, and I will find her. She's in a better mood. She follows the robot. The robot stands in a room of assorted heavy machinery with an odor of burning resistors. The machines fill the room with noisy, whirring sounds. On one wall are 3 buttons, round, rectangular, and square. Naturally, above these buttons are instructions written in an obscure computer code, and a warning sign. She frowns, remembering her futile attempts to program on her Tio's old computer. She asks the robot to proceed to the next room. She follows. This is a dingy closet. There are English words on the wall. In the center of the closet is a beautiful red crystal sphere. As she reaches for it, a steel cage drops from above. She's trapped. To make matters worse, a poisonous gas begins to fill the room. Now what? She tries to remain calm and asks the robot to lift the cage. The cage shakes and is hurled across the room. It's hard to say, but the robot appears to be smiling. Without wasting any time, she takes the red sphere and asks the robot to leave the room. She follows him. She looks into the sphere. A strange vision takes shape. A small and dreary room appears, eerily illuminated by a glow emanating from a crack in one of the walls. The light focuses on a dusty wooden table in the center of the room. On one side of the room is a massive wooden door, near the top of which, in the center, is a window barred with iron. A formidable lock is set in the door. A keyhole lies within the lock. A rusty iron key is in place within the keyhole. The vision fades, leaving only an ordinary crystal sphere. What was that? She says a short prayer. San Antonio de Padua, help me find the right buttons. After a minute, she asks the robot to push the round and middle triangular buttons. The robot gladly obliges. After pressing the triangular button, a dull thump is heard in the distance. The burning electrical smell is too much, so she rushes out of the room, leaving the robot. Adios! She feels somewhat disoriented as she continues through to the tea room. Part 5. The Topiary and Beyond. She steps into the mysteriously floating bucket filled with a quantity of water. She transfers some of the water from the bucket to the teapot, and the bucket slowly descends to the bottom of the well. She steps out, leaving the teapot behind. If someone needs it. She walks past the dingy closet, the stone door, and then steps hesitantly into the round carousel room. It's not spinning anymore. There is a dented steel box here. She opens it, revealing a fancy violin. She takes the violin and tries to play it. An amazingly offensive noise issues from the violin. She chooses one of the passageways leading off the circular room. She encounters a cobwebby corridor. Some cobwebs are broken and the dust on the floor is disturbed in the direction of her travel. There is a coil of braided string here. She takes it and continues. She enters a musty room filled with more cobwebs, though there are tracks in the dust showing recent visitors. At one end of the room is a stained and battered, but extremely strong-looking door. Embedded in the door is a nasty-looking lizard head with sharp teeth and beady eyes. The lizard sniffs at her. ¿Tienes hambre? She pulls out the bag of candies and gives it to the lizard. It greedily wolfs down the candies, including the package. Its eyelids grow heavy, and it seems to fall asleep. She read somewhere lizards are known to sleep a long time while digesting their meals. I think this place is as safe as any. She drops the necklace, red sphere, and fancy violin. She returns to the carousel room, then to a different end of the formal garden. Hedges hide the cavern walls with a topiary of fantastically shaped bushes arranged with geometric precision. Although not recently clipped, creatures of different shapes can still be ascertained. A dragon, unicorn, great serpent, huge misshapen dog, and several human-like figures. There's something about them that hastens her steps along the path of white-crushed stones. Further along the path is the gazebo. There is a small gap in the hedges nearby. She walks towards the gazebo. The wizard reappears. Oh, Dios, not again! He withdraws his wand and waves it in her direction. It begins to glow faintly. Before she can duck and cover, the wizard, in a deep and resonant voice, speaks the word fear, then cackles gleefully before disappearing. Her heart grows cold and she trembles. The hedge looks sinister and the roses seem to bleed. What am I doing here? Is Juliana really worth all this? A white animal with a long horn on its head appears. She cowers behind a rose bush. Déjame en paz! She screams. The unicorn listens distractedly, then returns to cropping grass. I just got lucky defeating the monster, the cyclops, and thief. The next ones will have their way, and that will be the end of it. I'm a wimp. What am I thinking? I have no business being a hero. Time passes. Then, in a blink, the feeling clears. Yo quiero mucho, Juliana y su chica. The unicorn watches her. Around his neck is a red satin ribbon on which is strung a tiny key. She steps into the gazebo. She takes the matchbook, newspaper, placemat, and letter opener. Outside, the unicorn is partly hidden by some trees. She reads the back of the matchbook. Visit Exotic 1. Consult the Frobozz Magic Travel Agency or visit your local computer store. As she steps out, the unicorn bounds lightly away. The residual effects of the spell apparently include a gnawing anxiety. Who am I? What am I? Why am I here? Did I think I was a mighty adventurer? This is a man's world after all. I don't belong here. She stumbles along the path toward the shapely bushes. Even they seem to mock her and have changed positions slightly. She remembers the matchbook. Well, the marketing department seems to think I belong here. She stops and takes out the newspaper. What about the news? The newspaper, however, is written completely in English. There is an advertisement soliciting for the office housekeeping services of a young woman with dubious immigration status. No hay papeles, no hay problemas, it says optimistically. Of course. The unicorn returns, peacefully cropping grass. That key might be useful. She approaches the unicorn, but he bounds lightly away. She returns to the carousel room and takes another passage which leads her to a marble hall. This is a short arched hall of finest marble which stops abruptly near a ford across a stream where the marble is cracked and broken. There is a square brick here which feels like clay. She takes it. It smells like motor oil. She crosses the stream. The walls of the ravine rise steeply above. There is a small ledge along one side of the ravine. She climbs up. The ledge continues out of sight. A precarious climb is possible to an even smaller ledge above and an opening in the ravine wall. A short scramble down leads to the edge of the stream. She climbs up. She enters a tiny room carved into the wall of the ravine. On one side of the room is a massive wooden door with a window barred with iron near the top center. A formidable bolt lock is set within the frame door. A keyhole, covered by a thin metal lid, lies within the lock. There is a key in that door, from what I remember. She slides the doormat under the door and puts the letter opener in the keyhole. There is a faint noise from behind the door, and a small cloud of dust rises from beneath it. She removes the letter opener and pulls the mat towards her. There's a rusty iron key on the doormat now. She takes the key and unlocks the door. She opens the door to a dreary room containing a wooden table holding a blue crystal sphere. She takes the sphere and looks into it. She sees a murky room with a sandy floor. Though her vision is blurred and unclear, as if she's looking through water, the vision fades, revealing only an ordinary crystal sphere. She carefully climbs down to the ravine ledge and continues walking upstream. Part 6. The Prince. The ledge leads to a tunnel from which issues an odd smoky odor. Her sword is glowing faintly. The tunnel leads to a large cavern filled with broken stones. The walls are scorched and deep scratches mar the floor. The place has a strong, dry, sooty smell. A paved path winds through the room over a bridge, which she recognizes as having cyclopean masonry, and a stairway on one side of the room is visible. A huge dragon blocks a smoky opening. Smoke curls from his nostrils and between his teeth. Her sword has begun to glow very brightly. She thinks she sees a human shape in the shadows of the smoky opening. The dragon ignores her. Who is that? I've got nothing to lose. She charges at the dragon and strikes it with her sword. Her sword has no effect on its thick hide. The dragon is surprised and interested, for the moment, and watches her carefully. Nothing lost, nothing gained. Oh well. She steps over the stone bridge. Although ruined, it's still impressive, spanning a deep chasm with water flowing far beneath. The path continues into a misty tunnel. The dragon follows her, out of mingling curiosity and anger. Oh great, it's following me. Regresa! She angrily shouts and whacks the sword against its armored side. He isn't impressed, yet follows her anyway. This is a cool, misty, and damp room. The path splits here, and the mist and chills seem to originate from one of the branches. She jabs her sword ineffectively at the dragon. The dragon continues to follow her. Why is he still following me? Where is this going? She enters a large hall of ancient lava carved out from the movement of a glacier. A large passage exits one end, and an upward lava tube with lava sickles near a jumble of fallen rocks. Ice in various forms fills the room. As the dragon enters, he sees his reflection on the icy surface of the glacier. He becomes enraged. There is another dragon here, behind that glass, he thinks. Dragons are smart, but sometimes naive, and this one has never seen ice before. He rears up to challenge this intruder into his territory. He roars a challenge. The intruder responds. The dragon takes a deep breath, and out of his mouth pours a massive gout of flame. It washes over the ice, which melts rapidly, sending out torrents of water and a huge cloud of steam. She manages to clamber up to a small shelf as a torrent of water washes over the rocks. The dragon, with a puzzled expression on his face, is carried away by the water. When the flood recedes, she climbs gingerly down. While no trace of the dragon can be found, the melting of the ice has revealed a passage hidden hitherto. Her sword is no longer glowing. She retraces her steps to the dragon room. Suddenly, the wizard appears, points his wand, and mutters the word, "Float!" He cackles rather nastily, then disappears. Suddenly, she feels nothing below her boots as the floor recedes, and she finds herself suspended several feet above the tumbled rocks. She shouts. She fails around and drops the sword. Time passes. Her hands drop in frustration. Then, the spell unwinds, and she gently falls back to the floor. Someone is watching me. She walks up to the dragon's lair. There's a rotten wooden chest in one corner among the debris. A beautiful young man, wearing a dirty and bedraggled cloak, stands in the corner, rocking back and forth, sobbing softly. His hair is unkempt, and he seems oblivious to your presence, almost in a trance. Pobrecito. She kisses him. It's a revelation. The prince, or at least that's what he seems to be, shakes himself awake, then notices her for the first time, and smiles. "Thank you for rescuing me from that horrid worm. I must depart. My parents will be worried about me." With that, he looks purposely out of the lair. What am I going to do now? The wooden chest is too tempting to pass up. Something is in there. She tries to open it. The hinges are very rusty, but they start to give. With effort, it opens. Inside is a wrought gold statuette of a dragon, which she takes. The prince departs, looking back as he walks. She follows. He walks out of the dragon's room, glancing back, as if to make sure he's being followed. She has a nagging feeling she's left something behind. At the edge of the ravine, he carefully climbs down to the stream below. There's some dragon scales scattered among the rocks. He crosses the stream and enters the marble hall. The prince presses a loose piece of marble in the wall, and a passage opens up. He enters it. She follows. The prince leads her into the garden and enters the gazebo. She joins him there. "Hola, ¿cómo estás?" The prince ignores her, his attention riveted elsewhere. Shyly, a unicorn peeks through the hedges. It notices the prince and seems captivated. It approaches him, and when it comes near, bows its head as if to curtsy. Around its neck is a red satin ribbon on which is strung a delicate gold key. The prince takes the ribbon and ties up his hair. He then hands her the key and a fresh rose he plucks from the arbor. "You may have use for such a thing," he says in Spanish with a Mexican accent. "It is the least I can do for one who has rescued me from a fate I dare not contemplate." With that, he mounts the unicorn, side saddle of course, and rides off into the gloom. The rose smells just like a perfect rose. Part 7. The Wizard's Workshop. Suddenly, the wizard reappears. He waves his wand in her direction and, like a threat, hisses the word "fault." He cackles nastily before disappearing. The rose is dropped, its floral fragrance forgotten, the grateful, handsome prince a questionable rumor. "I shouldn't have ever asked Juliana to come with me. None of this would have happened. This is all my fault." She shudders and stumbles along the path toward the shapely hedges. Even they seem to accuse her. She feels something in her pocket. It's the matchbook. In Spanish. Whoever made that thinks I belong here at any rate. She's feeling a little better as she finds her way back to the room, with the door somewhat guarded by the snoozing lizard. She uses the golden key to unlock the door, careful not to wake him, who seems completely absorbed in some lizard dream. She assesses her loot. Which are the most important? She picks up the red sphere and puts it back in her pack, opens the door, and walks through. This appears to be a wizard's library. Dark corridors are to the right and straight ahead. She takes the corridor on the right, smelling of incense or candle smoke. This appears to be the wizard's workroom. A hall continues ahead, and a large room opens to her left. There are many shelves and racks around the room, but the wizard's workbench dominates the room. It is made of some dark, heavy wood bound with iron. The workbench is stained from many years of use and is deeply grooved as if some huge clawed animal was imprisoned on it. There are burn marks and notes written in a crooked scrawl. Many arcane items are scattered around the room: alembics, mortar and pestle, retorts, and much more. In the center of the bench are affixed 3 stands which form a triangle. One appears ruby, another sapphire, and the third diamond. She goes left. So this is where it's at. Inscribed on the floor is a great pentagram drawn with a black circle in its center. The doorway. The place gives her the creeps, so she leaves and walks down the hallway, which turns a corner. Before her stands a large aquarium which dominates the entire side of the room. On one side is the entrance to another room. Inside the aquarium is a crystal sphere and a baby sea serpent. She steps closer. The sea serpent suddenly lunges, and from a reflex, she throws the sword at the aquarium, shattering the glass, spilling out an impressive amount of salt water and sand. It also spills out an extremely annoyed serpent who bites angrily at her feet. He seems to hold her responsible for its condition. The water, however, washes it out of the room and down the hallway, out of sight. The sword is wedged under a heavy stone and won't budge. A clear crystal sphere sits amid the sand and broken glass. She takes the crystal sphere and returns to the wizard's workroom. There, she puts the red sphere on the ruby stand, the blue sphere on the sapphire stand, and the crystal sphere on the diamond stand. As she places the crystal sphere, a low humming noise begins, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. The three spheres vibrate faster and faster as the noise becomes higher and higher pitched. Just as the noise passes beyond human hearing, three puffs of smoke, one red, blue, and white, rise up from empty stands. But in the center of the triangle formed by the stands is now a black stand of obsidian in which rests a black sphere. She takes it and peers into it. A strange vision takes place. It is a huge and fearful face with yellow eyes. The face appears expectantly before the vision fades. The black sphere seems to carry some kind of power, so it might come in handy in a pinch. The passageway to the left opens up to a kind of trophy room. On one wall is the wizard's Doctor of Thaumaturgy certificate from GUE Tech. Several worn-out magic wands are mounted as well. A collection of dull and nicked swords tell of the fate of many a foolhardy adventurer. There is a stuffed owl on a perch and a collection of discarded homunculi, some preserved in alcohol. The degree in English is indecipherable. Part 8. The Volcano. On the way through the cobwebby corridor, she notices an opening that wasn't there before. It is a lava tube curving into a tight chimney formed by solidified lava. It extends upward at least another 100 feet and down a short distance to a large room below. There is a Moby ruby here. Another treasure. She takes the ruby and goes down the tube. The floor is still wet from the melted ice, but it's cool. The passage and the end of the room leads to a large dormant volcano in the distance. High above, light enters from the cone of the volcano. There is a very large and heavy wicker basket here. An enormous cloth bag is firmly attached to the basket and hangs over the side, along with a piece of wire. A metal box with ashes at the bottom is in the middle of the basket. Inside is a leaflet, translated into Spanish. I'm not sure I'd have figured this out without the hints. She puts the newspaper in the box, then lights it with a match. Let's see where this goes. Vamos! The balloon gently rises slowly from the ground. She's about 100 feet above the volcano bottom. The volcano cone is clearly visible as she continues to gently rise. Soon, she's several hundred feet above the volcano floor. She is near the rim of the volcano. Above is the open sky. I could just float away. There's a wide ledge nearby with a small door beyond. She tells the balloon to land. The ledge overlooks the inside of a dormant volcano. The rim of the volcano is about 200 feet above, and there is a precipitous drop to the volcano bottom. A doorway leads deeper into the volcano. There is a small hook attached to the rock here. I don't want to get stuck. She ties the braided wire to the hook, then gets out of the basket. At her feet is a bright golden coin. 10,000 Zork mids? She puts it in her pocket. She steps through the door and into what appears to be an old library. A passageway leads farther into the volcano. All the shelves appear to have been gnawed by something or someone. All that's left are 4 books. She opens the blue one, her favorite color. Inside is an intricate-looking stamp. She takes it. She opens the white book, which is written in a crude approximation of Spanish and some other language. It appears to describe the use of the so-called magic wand. You are supposed to point it in the direction of the object to enchant, then speak the appropriate magic words. She glances at the other books, which are undecipherable, then advances deeper into the volcano. This is a dusty old room that is virtually featureless except for a rusty box. The box appears somewhat damaged, with a rough hole cut out from the front. There's something inside the box, but the hole is too small. The clay that's not clay. She takes the clay-like brick and inserts it in the hole in the box. Then she sticks the black string in the brick, lights the string, then sprints back to the library. The wizard suddenly appears. He notices she's carrying the black sphere and with an unseemly haste disappears. There is an explosion nearby. She rushes back into the dusty room. The rusty box's door has been blown off. The floor is cluttered with debris from the explosion and the walls seem at the brink of collapse. There is a gaudy crown and a card. She takes both. She puts on the crown, then reads the card. Warning. This room was constructed over very weak rock strata. Detonation of explosives is strictly prohibited. Frobozz Magic Cave Company. M. Agrippa. Foreman. She promptly leaves the room. As she leaves the library, she hears an ominous rumbling, as if a room collapsed, probably as a result of the explosion. She returns to the ledge, enters the basket, unties the braided wire, and floats away. She looks up to the bright sky above, sighs, then covers the burning newspaper. The balloon slowly descends. She mournfully watches the blue sky recede. Will I ever see the sky again? Juliana? After several minutes, the basket lands at the bottom of the volcano. Smoke leaks out of the receptacle. She gets out of the basket and walks back to the guarded room, dropping most of her treasures there. Part 9. The Demon. It's back to the dragon room to investigate another passage blocked by the dragons and transigants. This is a fresco room showing something battling dragons and rescuing fair families. It's hard to tell what sort of something is doing this, as those parts are blackened by intense heat. The passage opens up to a large entrance hall to what looks like a bank. Most of the furniture has been pilfered by passing scavengers. They couldn't take the writing on the walls, though. She passes through one of the archways. This looks like a room used by bank officers to retrieve safety deposit boxes for customers. Or at least that's what she's reminded of from the bank she would visit with her uncle. Most everything has been extensively vandalized, with the exception of a portrait which is presumably the bank's founding chairman. His flat head is anything but flattering, ha ha, and may be why no one stole it. As big as it is, it fits into her pack. A sign hangs over an open door, which she passes through. This is a large rectangular room. All the safety deposit boxes which once were stored here have been carefully removed by evil persons. There are large doorways on the other sides of the room, except for one side, which is a shimmering curtain of light. In the center of the room is a large stone cube. Engraved on the side of the cube is some lettering, and there is a worn piece of paper on the floor. She takes and reads the paper. Walk through wall, okay? She holds her breath and enters the curtain. It's mildly disorienting before she steps into a small room with no features.
Huh?
She takes a step back and enters the curtain again, returning back to where she was before. Well, that didn't do anything. After passing through the curtain a second time, she finds herself in a bank vault with no doors. On the floor are several hundred neatly stacked bills with Zork written on them. She takes them, then walks through the shimmering wall, returning to the safety depository. She places the bills next to the portrait in her pack and leaves the bank behind. My first bank robbery! She retraces her step to the round room. There's one passage I haven't tried yet. Through the last unchosen doorway sits a small chamber carved out of the rock. The number 8 is roughly carved on the wall. There is a spray can here. She can't read the label and has little interest in finding out, as the lamp is visibly dimmer. She shudders, then hurries out of the room. Returning to the guarded room, she surveys her treasures. There's nothing I couldn't buy with all this. Freedom? But not for me. It takes 2 trips to lug her loot through the drowsy lizard door to the wizard's workshop, setting them near the pentagram. She gazes into the black sphere. No reflection. She sets it in the middle of the pentagram, then leaps back. A cold wind blows, seemingly from the sphere, and a low moan is heard. It rises in pitch until it's almost too loud to hear. A dim shape becomes visible in the air above the sphere. The shape resolves into a large and formidable-looking djinn. He looks around, tests the walls of the pentagram experimentally, and then sees her. It's you, a new master, he says under his breath. As if reciting a rote formula, he continues. Greetings, would desire a treasure, riches beyond measure? I can make you a true king, queen, fit for that crown? As she remains speechless, he continues. I can satisfy thy desire to the utmost limit. Vast amounts of money and the things it could buy flash by her eyes. What good is all that? All I want is to find Juliana and go home. I don't want a treasure. I want the wizard's wand. Give me the wand. The djinn frowned, seemingly hearing her thoughts. I have no power over it, as that foul device binds me to this prison. If I free you, can you give me the wand? The djinn seems confused. Yes, but for what reason would you limit the extent to which you could indulge your desires? The rich can do anything! He chuckles. Forsooth, I am called demon by your kind, and as such serve no human outside this prison. Free me, and I have no obligation to return the favor. Suddenly, the wizard materializes in the room. He is astonished to see his servant in deep conversation with a common woman adventurer. He draws forth his wand, waves it frantically, and incants, Frobozz! Frobozz! Frobnoid! The djinn laughs heartily. You are no longer in control of the Black Crystal Hedge Wizard. Your wand is powerless. The djinn turns to her expectantly. What good are riches if this wacky wizard can suddenly appear out of nowhere, only to harass me? What if I were to lose the Black Sphere? No, I need to take the risk. In Spanish, she tells the demon she wants to free it so she can get the wizard's wand. She proceeds to give him the necklace. You are a foolish woman, the demon snarls, but gladly takes the necklace. I've been called far worse. She hands over the portrait and the other treasures. One by one, they disappear in the demon's enormous hands. Slowly, the pentagram's aspect changes, less transparent and wavier, clearer. Finally, after handing him the crown, the pentagram falls away and the demon stretches, moves about the room. Wide open spaces, he says in a deep sing-songy voice. He turns to her, then points his chin to an increasingly frustrated and terrified wizard. Now I suppose you want the wand, he asks in an annoyed tone. See. The demon rolls his horrible eyes and makes a dismissive flick of his finger against his thumb. The wand flies out of the wizard's powerless hands and lands at her feet. He has a look of abject terror as he stutters insults. You're not supposed to be here! You're vermin! You're polluting this country! Go back to where you came from! Oh, shut up! The demon roars. Go back to where you came from! The demon snaps his fingers and, before the wizard disappears, he has a look of such utter contentment and peace on his face that, for the first time, she actually feels sorry for him. That has been my desire e'er since that charlatan bent me to his service, the demon muttered. The djinn envelops himself in a cloud of greasy black smoke, then departs, his freedom secured. The black sphere remains in the center of the pentagram. Part 10. The Crypt. Gripping the wand, she leaves it all behind and returns to find the last unexplored room. This is a large space which was once used as a quarry. A stairway leads down. Many large limestone chunks lie helter-skelter. Some appear to have been used to carve out building blocks, others to produce menhirs, standing stones, which are mostly oddly shaped faces. One blocks a passageway at the end of the room. She points the wand and it glows faintly, begins to vibrate. What's the English word? She feels immense in power and says, Float! The menhir floats majestically, rising about 10 feet into the air, revealing the heretofore blocked passage. It leads to a room which may have once been a kennel for a very large dog. Some of the bones would fit a dinosaur. It apparently hasn't been used for a long time, as the dust and debris are fairly thick everywhere. The only exit is the one she walked through. A gigantic dog collar lies among the debris. She takes it. She walks back through the room with floating menhir and follows the passage leading to a marble stairway descending into gloom. At the bottom of the stairway is a dark room with black tiles laid out in a labyrinthian floor pattern. There are no visible exits. A dead end? She follows the tiles leading towards the center. A puzzle? She walks thoughtfully. Upon reaching the center, she hears a grinding, rusty sound. A portion of the floor in the corner appears to have given way to a rectangle of unrelieved darkness. Farther down? The dimming lamp shows the way. This is the entrance of a large crypt or tomb. A vicious-looking dog guards it. It is more or less your usual dog, except that it has 3 heads and is the size of an elephant. A collar. She pulls out the collar, and the dog regards her curiously as she snaps it in place. The creature whines happily. The center head licks her face. The other two heads look about as though suddenly struck by a need to find a pair of slippers to chew. Its huge tail wags enthusiastically, knocking small rocks around, just about blowing you over from the breeze it creates. ¿Quién es un buen niño? ¿Tú? ¿Tú? ¿Y tú? She pets the dogs. He is now insanely happy, slobbering all over the place and whining with uncontained doggish joy. She reluctantly leaves them behind. She steps into a large anteroom. The marble carvings show odd people with odd features, which she assumes are merely wealthy Americans making some kind of fashion statement. A huge marble door stands on one end of the large room. Above the door is a cryptic inscription of some kind. The door creaks open. This room contains which appears to be skulls mounted on poles. Nothing else. Is this how they bury their revered dead? Writing is on the walls, but it's in English. The only apparent exit is the one she walked through. A dead end? The lamp flickers. Is this my dead end? Her hand rests on the lamp switch. If this is the end, Juliana, no, I never gave up. Her hand flicks the switch. Total darkness. Okay? On the far wall is a faint outline of a dim rectangle, as though a light were shining through a very tight door. There's a faintly glowing letter in the center of this area, possibly an F. She pushes, and the door opens noiselessly, closing her eyes. Stepping through the door, feeling her way. Then she looks. Beyond the door is a roughly carved staircase leading down into darkness past the range of vision. The landing is covered with carefully drawn magical runes, much like those carved upon the wizard's workbench. These have been overlaid with green lines of enormous power, which undulate back and forth across the landing. The wand begins to vibrate in harmony with the motion of the lines. You feel a small but insistent voice calling, "Down!" and she yields, stepping into the staircase. As she passes the green lines, they flare and disappear with a burst of light, and she tumbles downward. She lands at the bottom of the stairs in a bit of a heap. A vast red-lit hall stretches into the distance. Sinister statues guard the entrance to a dimly visible room far ahead. She rises and goes on.